What's up, y'all? This is Minutes with Mellon. Uh, Take long videos, make them real short. That's what we do. This one blew my fucking mind. You gotta hear this shit. This ties into that Darien Gap video. This shit is crazy. Here we oh. Alright, here we go.
Southern border continues. The disaster is unfolding right before our eyes, but it seems like independent journalists are shining a light in dark places. It could be resulting in some major shifts right now among the deep state players in all of this. So all of this is facilitated. All of this is being orchestrated to bring illegal immigrants into the United States, to undermine the United States, and it's being done with the help of the U.S. government, being funded and supported by the U.S. government. Two great journalists who, of course, have been exposing what's been going on at Darien Gap, Ann Vandersteel, Michael Yon, join us now with some really big news on shining a light on this, getting international attention, and suddenly now there's a mysterious fire. And documents are going missing, and the government's panicking, we think. Can you guys break this down? What exactly has been happening in Panama that our audience needs to know about?
Go ahead, Ann.
So Clayton, very simply, Michael Yon has been leading an expedition down the Darien Gap for several years now. He focused in on it right after the election. But more recently, I've been joining him. As a matter of fact, we joined together during Operation Burning Edge. We kicked it off and we were on your show when we were stumbling across new information with respect to missing children out of the NGOs that we were focusing in on in Texas. Well, that's taken us back to Darien because the majority of the state sponsors of terror are moving these, quote, migrants, and they're not, that's an invasion army, through the Darien Gap, up through Central America. This is funded by the American taxpayer through the United Nations Immigration organization, non-governmental organization of choice known as IOM, the International Organization for Migration, as well as other NGOs like HIAS, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. We focused closely in on HIAS when we visited one camp called San Vicente. Michael calls it China Camp. A lot of Chinese immigrants, if you will, migrants or invasion army come through there, and they're mostly men of military age. You can speak to the people down there. They will tell you that's what they see. That's what we saw. After going down there with Epoch Times, Laura Loomer, myself, Mara Macy, who's running for Congress, probably one of the only honest brokers of a congressional opportunity who's willing to report on this, we all witnessed it, saw some very suspicious people. 1 week later, HIAS locked their Twitter account. They took their sign down that was outside San Vicente camp. And then the camp mysteriously was torched, specifically the offices that have the immigration records of who have processed through that camp on their way to the United States, in addition to the agents, the immigration agents, and in addition to the Centerfront agents. So everything was wiped out, which is very, very suspicious considering this was less than a week after us being there.
That was just last Friday, the fire, by the way. The camp itself wasn't completely burned down. They targeted those records. And Centerfront actually announced, what's today? Yeah, they announced yesterday that they're doing a special investigation because they see that they believe Centerfront basically is the Panamanian sort of border police slash almost like an army, but it's not actually an army. And they're very professional, super fit, I deal with them all the time. And 3 of them were badly hurt, by the way, in this riot. It looks like what happened was there was agent provocateurs kicked off this big riot. 45 people, about 250 people apparently were involved. 45 were arrested or being deported now. And but they specifically targeted those records. So most of the camp was not touched at all, but those buildings burned. Actually, what I'm curious about, this is just me thinking out loud. I have no evidence to support this, but there's multiple people that would have interest in capturing those records. And it would be very easy to do that. I'm very familiar with that camp. Ann's very, very familiar. We've been there many, many times. It's very easy. If you started a ruckus like this, you could easily capture those records because they did it at nighttime, escape into the nighttime and be gone with them. And then, of course, make the fire looking like the records were destroyed. Because HIAS, of course, would want to do this. Venezuelans may want to do it. Chinese Communist Party uses that camp as an infiltration camp. There's a lot of people that would have the motive to do this and the means.
So I guess I will follow up with that then, Michael. Who do you think would want these records? What's the purpose of getting these immigrant records? These are people being processed here, as Ann pointed out. So who would have the motivation? Why would they have the motivation to get these records? Wouldn't they already know that these individuals are flowing through here? They're facilitating it after all.
Let me take that just for a moment. I think there's multiple, like the U.S. government as an example. It's clear. I mean, we've been very clear. This is a terror camp. I mean, this is the most intense terrorist camp you've ever seen.
This is a terrorist camp. What?
It's more like a bus station, right? So even the United States government or the United Nations, what are they? World Economic Forum, Chinese Communist Party. Let's say the U.S. government. They have a vested interest in destroying those records or capturing those records because they don't want to see that Americans have flowed through there. Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, was at that camp on April 18th, 2022. I was physically present. I waited for 4 days. He landed in 4 Blackhawks, and he was in the camp bringing $18 million more to the camp that time to expand it. So he's physically been there. They published their own photos from their public affairs, the Department of Homeland Security. And then, of course, I've published images and video from that day as well. So that's one.
Mayorkas, that piece of shit.
Motivated partner, the United States, getting rid of the records so that, when they start shooting up synagogues and golf courses down here in Florida, that people aren't saying, hey, and others would, of course, be the Chinese Communist Party.
So the idea is we want to cover our path. We want to cover our path here. We want to. These terrorists are in the United States. The tens of thousands of terrorists that are in the United States now, and we taxpayers have been paying for it. So we want to destroy the paper trail. Is that the case, Ann?
Absolutely. And let's be really clear. When Michael and I were in a car last week driving in towards Tennessee, we were
tens of thousands of terrorists.
We received a phone call from somebody inside the military who who is a flight surgeon, who understands and explains very clearly that the immigrants, I'm going to use air quotes because they're not immigrants, okay? These invaders coming across our border are separated. The military is setting up what's called MEPS stations along the border at border checkpoints, border security works, Customs and Border Protection have already temporary facilities for processing. One immigrant, invader will be sent in one direction and another will be sent towards a MEPS facility for the military. Why are they doing this? They're already selecting immigrants, migrants, invaders to be processed for a pathway to citizenship inside our military, not too dissimilar to what they're doing in California and Chicago and other cities where they're saying, hey, join us on law enforcement and we'll give you a pathway to citizenship, a gun, a badge, a job, and a card so that you can legally earn money. Now you have invaders, an army with guns, just like President Obama wanted to have. He wanted to have his own private army. They are importing it. The United Nations is collaborating. Again,
President Obama wanted it. Guess who's running the fucking White House behind the scenes? You know it ain't Joe Biden's dumb fucking senile ass. This is all Obama.
We are the biggest funders of the UN through their NGO partners and importing these people from state sponsors of terror. And then you have a camp, which is a known camp where multiple Chinese of military age men are being processed, mysteriously have a fire. Now you have to also factor in that these illegal invaders are also getting debit cards for $2,200 a month from, again, the U.S. taxpayer. That being said, we know we're going into another banking collapse. It's going to be another cascading event of regional bank failures because the Fed is cutting off the spigot on Monday, the 11th. When that happens, you have to ask yourself, how much longer will these invaders be allowed to have their EBT cards refilled every month? When you're cut off from your bank and we're cut off from our bank, what do you think is going to happen to the illegals when they're cut off from their funds and you can't put food on the table? This is the table that is being set for a full-blown civil war in this country that is going to get very, very bloody. And again, it's all being funded by the taxpayer who is blindly walking themselves to the gallows by allowing the federal government to fund the United Nations.
I just spoke with J.J. Carroll, a former Customs and Border Protection agent for 24 years, supervisor, and said that
he's a serious person.
Serious, great guy.
Yeah, amazing. And he said, that he used to get within a year 5 special interest individuals. These are people who are on an FBI list. These are And out of the hundreds that they would arrest hundreds on a daily basis and send them back, 5 a year. Now, 80,000 are in the United States. These are people that the United States recognizes as terrorists or ties to terrorism, and they're coming from all sorts of different countries and entry points in the United States. This is no joke, and we're witnessing it right now through these camps. So when you see this fire, this camp is somewhat destroyed. This HIAS camp, China camp, as you call it, Michael, that's not the end of it, right? Now it's mutated. Where is it? Where is this mutating towards out of that one particular spot? Are you seeing other spots popping up like a hydra where these people are being processed and facilitated?
By the way, the MEPS stations, everybody who's been in the military knows what that is. That's your military.
Yeah, that's where they go to just process you. That's where they give you your ID card, physical, swear you in, all that dumb shit. Well, I had to go to Cleveland. Yeah, they had to drive me up to Cleveland. Go to the MEPS station.
In processing, right? Where they go and do the physicals and take your oath and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, the bottom line is a lot of the people that would be coming through the Darien now are actually flying in from Colombia, or they're flying in from Guatemala, or they're coming across the Canadian border. There was just a big run of people that came in here to Florida. They came up on, what was that, Jupiter
Beach, yeah.
Jupiter Beach. They're constantly doing that, right?
But they're also expanding their existing camps, like we witnessed down in the Darien, Baja Chiquito. They're expanding Baja Chiquito camp, Lajas Blancas. They're putting in water treatment facilities, which is really ironic because so many children were really sick that day we were there. Why? Because they had a pipe running down into the river where they were intaking water they were supposedly treating, but that pipe was also running right next to a waste pipe. So they were pumping waste into the river and they were sucking it right back up and supposedly processing it, and children were getting serious dysentery. So, I mean, this is, you see these NGOs with their signs and their booths all throughout these camps next to the American flags plastered right.
But we need people. If the federal government won't do it, this is an invasion. We are watching the country collapse right in front of our eyes.
That's it, Clayton. You hit the nail on the head, and thank you for bringing that segue up, because there are groups, there are lots of freedom groups out there that are asking these questions, and they're organizing. We just were in Tennessee. We spoke to some there. I speak to these people all over the country. And before people freak out when I use the word militia, it's in the Second Amendment. It's part of our Constitution. Militia is not the word that the FBI would have you mischaracterize with a bunch of...
So they basically just talk about... we need to do it ourselves. Take matters in our own hands, because ain't nobody helping us. Nobody. This is the real deal.
To a 0 per day influx where they were arresting them at the border and sending them back. And then ICE, under Donald Trump, was also making thousands of arrests on a regular basis. So we were actually creating a negative flow with all of the arrests that ICE was able to do. What's going on with that right now?
0. I don't see anything going on. We're being invaded everywhere we look. We're not even defending ourselves. ICE, under the direction of Tom Homan, when Tom Homan steps back into that role,